Hello, everyone. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Executive Editor of Black Enterprise, and you're here with Beyond the Hype. And our guest is a really special guest, Collette V. Smith, who, among other things, has the distinction of being only the first Black female and the second female overall to have coached in the NFL. An amazing, amazing achievement, a barrier that most people may have thought would never be achieved. Certainly, not in the short run, but it's happening, and you have a lot to share about what that means for you personally, professionally, what it means for leadership, what it means for success, and what it means for women who are operating in male-dominated cultures and environments.
Absolutely.
So start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of summarize your story.
Wow. Summarize my story. I mean, I'm a little Black girl from Queens, New York, right? With my mom is deep rooted in the South, Mobile, Alabama, and my dad's a New Yorker. And it's interesting how the dynamic is so different, but I've learned so much from both parties, right? My mom is demure and hospitable, and my dad is more in your face, and so I've gotten both of those. But I think for me, having just, good parents, good Black parents that know the lay of the land and tell it to you like it is. So for me, I've always just kind of had a lot of optimism for life. And I think I didn't really realize all the problems that may come into the world being a Black person. For me, it was just organically being human and wanting to thrive. So I did real estate for many years. I'm a former construction worker for about 10 to 15 years.
Another male-dominated industry, by the way.
Once again, yeah, I love a challenge. I just love a challenge. And I think I don't even look for the challenge. It just kind of happens and I grasp on. I went into construction and then I went to real estate. I was a top broker for a major firm here in New York called Halstead Property. And I was one of very few women, let alone Black women, in the new development marketing atmosphere of real estate. And eventually I found women's pro football. And I was like, this surely can't be true.
Okay, so hold up. So, okay, construction, real estate, pro football.
Right, yeah, I know.
Let's spend a little time on that. What sparked your interest? I know women who are in the executive, not in large numbers, but on the office side, the management side, the executive side, the administrative side of professional sports as a business. And clearly you had experiences before that would lend itself to that from a professional qualification standpoint. But what made you decide to actually play the game, to decide you wanted to be on that side of the you wanted to actually play on the field?
Oh, I wanted to be on the field, in the field, and tackling somebody. Oh, yeah.
Did you have a history? What was your athletic history prior to that?
Nothing great. I mean, it was just, my father wanted me, my older brother to play tennis, and I was more interested in playing football. So I hit the racket with my dad. I thought I was a pretty decent tennis player, but I didn't love it the way I loved football. So I believe for me, it was just like any other kid, but those kids happened to be boys. So a boy could say, I want to play football, and it was acceptable and it was welcomed and nourished. For me, it was the opposite. It was like, come on, stop. Give the football up, just go play tennis. And that never sat right with me. I like football the same way any other kid would, no matter what my gender was. So I just loved it.
There's a moment, I'm speaking of someone who loved football since he was, you're probably too young to remember this, but the old electric football set. So I loved football since I was 8 years old.
Yeah. I remember that set. Yeah.
But I tell people there's a point that everyone reaches when you start playing football. And I was, very undersized, even though I just loved the game, that you get your first contact. And either you like it or you don't. Like that's where you separate who really loves football and who doesn't.
Oh yeah, so I've got an interesting story about that. So when I started playing pro football, we have a thing, same as the NFL, where you have boot camp. And boot camp, you just go through drills, agility drills, technique, foundation, fundamentals, and then it's called training camp. Training camp now means you put the helmet on, the shoulder pads, all your equipment, your rib cage, your knee pads, your cleats, and you start hitting. And for me, I was excited, but I was just as scared as I was excited. And I wanted to be a running back my rookie year. And I remember we were at training camp and they called the play. It was a 22 dive. I'll never forget it. I had to follow the fullback and the 2-hole on right side. And they handed me the ball and I froze. I was like, oh, hell no. Because there were our big defensive linemen there. And I was like, I'm not going through there. And for a minute, I was jostled, mentally jostled. And I remember one of my teammates called a timeout. And she looked at me and she goes, what are you waiting on, Collette? T? Let's go. And I was so embarrassed. And I said, can we reload? Let's reload. And then I went through the play. I made a couple yards. I got tackled. And I remember laying on the football field. And I looked up, I looked at my hands. My hands were working. My feet, my legs worked. And I said, oh yeah, let's go, right? So the point about that is that you're separating the girls from the women. You know, you might like football, but you may not want to get hit. You may not be up for that particular challenge. I was up for it, but I had to be pushed in the water to be up for it.
Well,
So, yeah.
I totally get that. You know, again, even gender aside, you know, I have a good friend, I won't throw his name out, who physically you would expect to be built for football. I mean,
Yeah.
could palm a basketball, I mean, huge hands, must have been, even when we were in junior high school, he was maybe 6'4",
Good grief.
and, you know, 220 in junior high school. Could not stand contact. So they kept trying to make him play football. He could not stand hitting and he couldn't stand being hit. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. That's what separates you. No matter how
You
much you
separate the big boys from the little boys,
That's
you know,
right.
and that's where it's at, because you can have all the mental plays and know how to execute them mentally. But if you can't do that simultaneously being physical, there's a problem and you're not going to be hitting that field anymore.
So let's flesh it out a little bit. Talk about the team that you played for. How did you end up trying out for the team? The team was very successful, I believe.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience. What league, what team, and what was that like?
So when I was doing real estate back in say 2009 and 10, the market had crashed, and I was making a ton of money in real estate and new development sales. And I'm used to working, going. I love to keep going. So I found out about this league and this New York, a professional women's full tackle football team here in New York. And I literally was on my couch smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, literally, and just passing time. And it stumbled upon me. And so I said, well, I've got to go try out for this team. I have to. And at that time, I was 42 years old. Wow. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to make the team. Clearly, I'm not working out. I'm smoking a cigarette. This is insane. But I owed it to my childhood self. I owed it to my younger self to experience women on a legitimate New York women's team for a legitimate women's pro football league, to at least go experience it. And so I went out. To tryouts, and literally, I will say, it honestly was in my brain that I will not make the team, but I have to see it. And for some reason, when I got out of my car that cold Brooklyn December morning, and listen, I was not a morning person, and for me to get there, it was nails. It was nails for me to get there. And when I got out of my car and I saw 45 to 50 women playing a sport, man, that I was told I can't play because I'm a girl, the empowerment, the strength that I felt, the fortitude, the tenacity just came rearing in. because for me, it was about Black folks being told, you can't vote because you're Black. You can't go to our school because you're Black. You can't ride the bus and sit anywhere you want because you're Black. The same thing was applicable for me, being told I can't play a sport I happen to love because I'm a girl. So all that strength, I had Malcolm X on my back, Martin on my back, Sojourner on my back, Angela Davis on my back. I mean, it was just a beautiful, strengthening moment. And from that moment, I recall getting a number taped across my chest and a number on my back. And I went in. In fact, I didn't even know who I was. I never let out that strong, feisty, go-getter attitude to that capacity. And it kind of shaped who I am to this very day.
Yeah, somehow I got to coax you out of your shell. You know, the intensity, the energy, the assertiveness, which you have to have that to play the game. You like it. It's like you found yourself.
Completely.
You knew yourself all along, but you had to find a place for yourself, and it seems like you discovered that.
Yeah, that was the place. That was the place, because I've always been a strong-minded person, even as a child, but there was no home for it. I did well in real estate. I was probably the only woman, let alone the only Black woman in the boardroom, with these men, and I was a little apprehensive at times. It was a scary walk, but I still walked the walk. This was, we're about to get it in right now.
So talk about, you started out as a running back, but you eventually switched to defensive back. So you went from being hit to being the hitter. What was that transition like?
You know what? I didn't like getting hit, to be quite honest. I just didn't appreciate it, and I was almost like, how dare you? But so my coach and I, the head coach at that time, we spoke about it, and he said, I see you more on the defense where you're doing a hitting, because I realized I didn't like getting hit. I wanted to hit you, or I wanted to stop the play. And not only did I want to stop the play, I wanted to make a touchdown on that play on the defensive side. I wanted to do the unheard of, right? I wanted to do what was not the norm, because the norm is what I've been living my whole life, right? And so I'm like, we're stopping this right now. We're going to exceed that. So once I moved over and transitioned into defense, oh my God, the seas parted. The seas parted. I loved it. And I would listen. And then also, I think being the older player on the team, I mean, the women on my team, although women, they were in their 20s and their early 30s. I had already done the things they did. And for me, it was about, I may be slower than you, but I'm mentally capable and mentally strong. So you have more speed, but I study. I'm a scholar of football. So for me, it was more, I'm going to get to that play and stop it. At the same time, you get there based on your physical ability. I'm getting there on mental ability. Oh man, it's amazing.
One of my best friends I knew since third grade is the late Sam Mills. We grew up together in Long Branch, New Jersey. And he was known, before the end of his career, he was like the oldest non-kicker to play in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I picked his brain every time I got the chance I could. And he talked about how, like you said, they could be faster than you, they could be stronger than you. And he says, and every new generation of young players is faster and stronger than the previous generation just because of the natural evolution of athletes. And he says, but they're not smarter than me, and they don't know the game better than I. And he'd say, I know where they want to be before they get there.
Right on.
And that's player, I can bring it.
Absolutely. So if you couple the physical strength and the mental fortitude and the mental awareness, you're a winner. You're a winner. So like, for instance, there's a thing in football called scouting, right? So if I'm playing a certain team, if I'm going to play the Pittsburgh Passion or the DC Divas.
What was the name of your team, by the way? We didn't say that.
What's that?
What was the name of your team?
The New York Sharks.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we would have we'd have our schedule, just like the NFL. Our schedule would be listed at a certain time. And I would have to study a couple receivers because I played a defensive back. I was a secondary unit, which means DBs, free safeties, and cornerbacks. And you would pick up on gestures. So if you watch enough film, if you study enough, you get to pick up on their gestures. So if a receiver is standing there on the field and she's got her hands up, but then she goes like this, she's getting the ball. If you watch the plays enough, you understand what's going on. If she gives a look a certain way, I'm like, ball's going to her. I'm going to be right there, right? So it's about studying, right? So being a scholar in life, being a scholar in football, being a scholar at your business, being an entrepreneur, all of this takes time and dedication. So if you're not going to dedicate yourself fully to being the best version of you in whatever situation that may be, then stop right now. Because I'm a believer, I was raised by my dad to tell me, if you're not going to give 100%, don't even do it. Leave it alone.
So you have a successful career as a professional football player. Again, something that you weren't the first girl to grow up thinking this is what I want to do.
Right.
You were among the first girls/women to at least get a chance to do it. Over the last decade, there's been different leagues. And even I grew up with girls who we played at home, tackle, no equipment.
Right.
Girls that played, but they knew that for them, it may never go beyond that. They weren't going to get to play for their high school. They weren't going to get to play for their college. But you achieved that. But you could have stopped there. Tell me the journey from there to coaching and then the opportunity to coach at the NFL level, only the second woman to do it, the first Black woman to do it.
So I wanted more. Like I always want more. I stay hungry. I don't think I'm ever satisfied. If I did something great yesterday, I want something greater tomorrow. So I ultimately had double knee surgery, and it put me out of, being on that football field. And I loved my team so much because of the dedication that we all served. And the owner of I told the owner of my team that I'm going to be, leaving the team. I had just turned 45. I had surgery, so I was out of commission. I was on IR as injured reserve for a season, but I went to every single practice in every game. They had promoted me to do the marketing and the PR for my women's pro team. And I also did the promotions and events. And the owner said, you know what, Collette, we want you around still. We want you here. My energy is kind of either you love me or you hate me. There's really no in between, right? So she said, I want you to be one of our coaches. And of course I'm shocked. First of all, I'm proud that she thought that much of me to want me to coach. But then I was scared, like, wait a minute, I've never coached. Like I'm just learning football for the past 3 seasons. But I took it on because I just love football that much. And so now I found myself studying more than I was before. And I was already studying a ton. But I transitioned into being a football coach for my women's pro team. And I was coaching the defensive backs. I did that for about 3 years, and I was still doing the marketing and PR. All this, by the way, with no money, right? So it's a pro women's league and team, but if you want to call getting paid $300 for money, then cool, then we got paid, but it wasn't much. It was more from the heart. And I started strategizing from the marketing aspect while I was coaching to get some support from the New York Jets. I love the Giants. I'm a Jets girl first, always been that way. I'm very loyal. So I started reaching out to the Jets, and I started going on New York Jets fan group pages to give exposure marketing-wise for my women's team to have them come out to women's football games. And they would come out to games, and I would position myself. I believe that everything that we do is strategy, right? Strategy. So for me, it was like, you know what? I'm on a Jets fan group page. I love my Jets, so I'm being authentic and true. But let me position myself to say, we are the sisters of the New York Jets. When the NFL season is over and you're dying for football, you have it because the women play in the spring, right? As to not compete with the NFL, you know. So I had all these guys that were coming out to our games, and I'd have men that would reach out to me that were diehard Jets fans, and they would say, well, we don't have any New York Sharks gear or jerseys. What should we wear? What colors? And I said, you know what? I want you to come to my women's pro football games the same exact way you would go to a Jets game. And these guys started coming out. And I'm getting goosebumps right now. I could tell you when we're on the field doing pregame warm-ups and you see boatloads of men wearing Jets jerseys coming out to see you play, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. So these guys took notice of us. Then we started getting further and further, and now I'm going to the Jets headquarters, I'm making phone calls, and because closed mouths don't get fed. Right? So as far as I'm concerned, they're going to know who we are because I'm going to tell them. And I'm going to tell them every day. So everybody got phone calls from Collette V. Smith. And eventually I got a phone call from the vice president of a certain department at the New York Jets. His name is Clay Hampton. Love him to pieces. I owe him a great deal. And he called me one day. And I got to say, I had an attitude that day. I was not in a good mood, and I was being a little bit short on the phone until I discovered who he was. And he told me who he was, and he goes, listen, I love your energy. I'm seeing your posts about your women's team, and we really want to help you guys. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? Tell me what? And he goes, well, you tell me what you want. So I gave him a lot of information about what I wanted. And one of the things I asked for was to have on-field access to Jets practices so that I could learn from the greatest to be a greater coach for my women's team. I didn't go there with the hopes of one day I'm going to be a coach in the NFL. That was never even in my brain. So I got on-field access, and I had met at that time the general manager, the GM, Mike McCagnon. I'd met him out a few times before with different events and talked about, of course, my women's pro team. And I had also met Neil Glatt, the VP, the vice president for the New York Jets. He knew who I was. Then there was this coach, the head coach, a Black man, Todd Bowles. And I was so proud to see a Black man as a head coach for an NFL franchise team. And I remember being on the sideline at practice, and Mike McCagnon walks up to me and he goes, oh my God, Collette, how you been? How the Sharks? I said, we're great. We're undefeated. We're the North Atlantic Conference champions. And he's like, oh, wow. I knew that Coach Bowles was hearing, what was going on. So it was almost like I paid this guy to set the stage for me, And then shortly thereafter, about a minute or two later, the VP of the New York Jets comes over and he's like, Collette, how the Sharks? My wife and I still talk about your team. Being the person I am, I said, really? Because you've never been to one game. So, so we chuckled about that a little bit. And eventually the head coach came over, walked over to his GM and his VP. And I introduced myself. And he said to me, so what position do you play? And coach, I said, I play the same position that you played at Temple University. And I said that because I'm letting them know I do my homework. I research. So before I walked in those gates, I knew every coach's position, where he went to school, what his 40-yard dash was, what his vertical was, his inefficiencies, his qualification. I knew everything. Ask me, because I did my homework. So he kind of looked at me and he's like, all right. So it kind of just seamlessly went on from there. We did some more small talk, and we talked about defenses, 4-3 versus a 5-3, or, we did defensive talk because I'm a defensive coach and former player. And he said to me, well, look, enjoy, have a good day today. Glad you're here. It's an honor to have you. And he goes, if you need anything, you let me know.
Why did he say that?
Why did he say that? Because I was right on it. And he walked away. He took 1.5 steps. And I was like, Coach, I need something from you. And he turned around like, yeah, what is it? And I asked him the next question, which is, where are your defensive backs? Because ultimately I want to be around them, because that's what I played and coach currently. So he called the guys over. You got Revis, and Cromartie, and Buster Screen, and the DB coaches. And I'm like, so they all came running over to Coach Bowles. And they took a knee in front of him. And I'm standing next to Todd Bowles. Like, we're standing together, and he looks at me and he's like, anything else? And I said, no, I'm good. I'm good, thank you. So he told them who I was, and he goes, she's gonna be hanging around from time to time. I'm like, really? Okay. So he said to me, anything else, Coach? I said, no, I'm good. I'm just gonna go hang with these guys now, thanks. Let's have a great practice. And I found myself picking up on things that they could improve on. And I was calling the guys over. I was like, you're rounding out. You're lagging in the backfield too deep. You got to come downhill. And they're like, okay, Coach. And there was a player there. His name was Eric McMillan. He was a former defensive back with the New York Jets. And I knew him personally from years back. He comes over to me and he says, Collette, what are you doing here? I said, the same thing you are. It's me. Same thing you are. And it just kind of became it was a good day. It was a great day. After practice was over, Coach Bowles and I talked some more shop. And he said, you're welcome to come out whenever you want. Just let me know. And so it just kind of started from there. And he ultimately said to me, you should work for this organization. And I said, yes, I agree. I agree. So he told me to bring a resume the next time I come out. So I did. I drove back from New Jersey back to Queens, New York, opened up my laptop, I revised my resume, and I texted him that it was great. Thank you so much for your hospitality. I've learned a lot today. I'm looking forward to coming back, and can I come out? I'm available this day, this day, or this day. So he said, pick one and come on out. So I did. So I kind of kept going to practices, and I used my voice. I didn't want to be too overbearing, but I spoke about things that I thought that they could improve on.
So listen, I want to hit on 3 points before I ask my next question, or ask you to hit on 3 points. One, I really identify with your story of starting this athletic life, this pro athletic life, this competitive athletic life at 42. I became a competitive natural bodybuilder in my late 30s and early 40s.
Nice.
And I was telling people, if you ever told me when I was 20 that I would achieve my athletic identity this late in life, I never would have believed it. But if I hadn't done it, like you said, if you hadn't decided, listen, I'm just going to go, I don't know what's going to happen, I may not make the team. So one is about the first thing I want you to talk about is why it's never too late to do what it is you think you want to do. The second is about your showing up in really good, just doing it, not just laying in the background, but really stepping up and doing it. And then the third is the obvious thing that you between your real estate career, your construction career, and obviously your sports career, you learn to assert yourself in environments that most people think of as a man's world. So hit on those things as you made this journey, because I don't think you would have been able to make that journey if those 3 things weren't a constant element of the way you looked out at the world and looked at yourself.
I agree. Very valid point. For me, I think it's because being comfortable versus uncomfortable, right? So when you're comfortable, you're not growing, and you most likely are not doing things that you want to do. So if we were to close our eyes and dig deep and dream about the things that I want to be and do in this world, you probably won't do most of them, unfortunately. But if you really set yourself up, position yourself, I'm thinking football coaching now, position yourself to have leverage to get there. What does that look like? Like, what does that look like, right? So if you want to be an architect, are you reading up on it? Are you going to school? Did you even fill out an admission form? You know, what are we doing about it? What is your next step to get there? So when I'm comfortable, I'm not learning. When I'm uncomfortable is when the most growth happens, right? So if I stay in the same classroom and I master that class, I want to go to the next level. Most people are scared to go to the next level because they're not going to know. Well, that's the whole point of going to the next level, to jump in the water and learn, right? So for me, it was more about, I want more. I owe it to myself to want more and be more, not just for me, but for my parents and for every little Black girl and Black boy behind me. You know, God did not give me these platforms to put in a shoebox in the back of my closet. God gave me these platforms to use as a sign of hope and encouragement that any and everything is in fact possible if you believe in yourself. And let me back up and say, I'm not that guru that's like, oh, life is great, it's wonderful, just believe in. I'm a realist, right? So if you are not going to take the proper steps to get where you ultimately really want to be, it'll never happen, right? I believe in little victories, little increments of victories. It might have been 3 years before you thought about reading that book or going to meet with that CEO just to have a quick 2-minute elevator pitch. Do it, but prepare before you go do it. I'm a big advocate of staying ready so that you don't have to get ready.
Say that again.
Somebody calls on me, I'm ready.
Say that again.
You got to stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
That's right.
You know, and so I'm getting goosebumps right now. I feel like working out right now, but it's the truth. And things like that prepare you for your best future. You know, I want my best future because my future is not just for me. It's for this little girl behind me, you know, and so that's what I live my life on right now, you know. So I know when I walked away from coaching in the NFL, I had so many men tell me, how could you walk away from that? That's a dream job. And I'm like, really, it's a dream. So I should have been dreaming this to be a coach in the NFL? Really? Because when I was a little girl, they wouldn't even let me play organized football. So how could I dare dream to be a coach in the NFL? So it wasn't my dream, brother. You know, did that opportunity present itself? Yeah, I created it too. I created it. Yeah. You know, I'm not gonna wait on opportunity to come knock on my door, because if that's the case, that door will never ring. It will never be knocked on. I have to create opportunity.
So
right?
take me to this moment, you know, and I'm being mindful of the girls who will see, who are, you know, still even with the barrier that's been broken, are still probably being told the football, you don't want to do football. That's not what you're.
Oh yeah, they're still being told that.
Yeah. What was the moment like and the experience like when you were, and I remember I saw some of the news coverage and you in your Jets gear on, you know, and what was that like when you realized I am actually a coach bona fide in the NFL? Tell me about that.
Well, that's a two-part question, because the first thing I'll say is this. When Coach Bowles first said to me, you should work for this you should be working for this organization. And I didn't skip a beat. When I got to my car, I called my dad. And my dad knew I was going there. He was a Jets fan too. I said, Dad, Coach Bowles just said this to me. Can you believe it? And I was saying it as if I couldn't believe it. So my dad said to me, he just was listening to me, saying, can you believe this? I can't believe this. I can't believe it. And my dad said to me, you know what? I can believe it, Collette. And I'd be more proud of you if you believed it.
Wow.
And that resonated with me. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps again because it was very important. And I needed to hear that because it was almost like I was still questioning myself and my skills and my football IQ. And when he said, I'd be more proud if you believed it, I now operate full throttle on everything. I remember when I got to my first Jets football game as a coach. And I had my own locker room, of course, right? And everything. So I remember asking the head coach's assistant, her name was Jackie Lovett. And I said, well, what should I bring? You know, do I need to bring anything? She goes, no, everything that you need is going to be in the locker room for you. Just go there. Just go. Get on the bus and go with the guys. So I did. I get to my locker room, my name's on it, and I'm like, this is amazing. And, you know, and I remember even going there, I knew that the men were held to a higher standard, which means they didn't want them going there in gold chains and baseball caps. And it was wear a suit and tie. Let's go. So I got suit and ties. I did corporate America for 20 years at least. So I wore my business suit, my Louis Vuittons. Here we go. You know, but it was a different element. Like the guys were like, okay, coach. And I would tell them, quick, shut up. But those are my guys, you know, those are my guys. And getting to that locker room and putting on my Jets coaching stuff to go to the game, walking through that tunnel. My God, walking through that tunnel was everything. You know, it was for me, it was a sense of, not that I made it, but it was like I made a dent. And the playing field is a little bit more level now, right? So it was major important for me, you know, and to come walk through there and to see guys with their daughters at football games, and the girls are yelling, coach, coach. And I can look at them and go, you know, like, that's right. It was a proud moment, you know, that I'll carry with me forever, that I want other little girls to have. Yeah.
So I so feel you. I so feel you. You know, barrier breakers in general, often, you know, for those of us on the outside looking in, we have our own set of experiences, but it's a very personal, sounds like for you, experience to be the one to walk through that, not for yourself, but like you said, for all the other future generations who will look at you and say, well, at least I'll try. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll try because he did. It just seems that that's just extremely meaningful for you, not only in terms of the sports life, but the things that you're doing even beyond that, for future generations, for others, women and young people. It really resonates. It really resonates.
Yeah, you know, I think that knowing the magnitude of your actions, that can propel your tomorrow to be better today. You know, and knowing that there is some power, like we all have a certain amount of power. When are we going to unleash it? You know, when are you going to believe in yourself wholeheartedly? You know, I mean, I know I keep going back in the day and civil rights era, and I can go back to slavery. You know, it took somebody and people to be around them to believe in this movement, to be better, to expect more for their lives and for their future children's lives. That is the way I live my life. You know, I'm not just here for me, and I have to set an example for others, but it feels good when I get up in the morning and brush my teeth and look in the mirror. I'm like, yeah, girl, that's right. You know, And so it's an everyday, every day is a new struggle, but without struggle, there would be no favor, because to tell you the truth, it's the failures that actually have taught me the most, my failures, So you get on a football field, you get tackled, you get up and you try to go further. You don't fall, you don't get tackled and hit the field and just stay there. No, he came at me from this angle. So if I come in this direction, I got him, right? So it's like figuring out what works best for you, but you got to be in the game to even try to get a W. I want W's, but it's the losses that have taught me the most.
Now that is the perfect segue to my next question, which is, obviously, you were a great example of doing this in a particular sport, but there are lessons that apply to people in general, but let's say women in particular, in all walks of life, in many professions, that are still where they can be the only woman or the first woman or the first Black woman. So while we're talking in the context of football, what are the lessons that you take away, 2 or 3 lessons that you think that you would advise any woman to take away from your experiences if they're the first vice president of their division in a corporation who was Black or a woman, or the first woman to dominate in a particular industry, science, tech, or any industry, because there's so many industries where being the first woman or the first Black woman is still happening. And have the courage.
Absolutely. Fear. Fear doesn't control you. Fear should fuel you up. Fear should fire you up, right? So I've learned from my experiences speaking up. So if I think I have a great idea that I want to mention in our meeting, but I'm the only woman there, you know what, let me just lay low, and I don't want some guy to say, oh, that's horrible, we've already done that, or no, speak up. Like, so my fear now doesn't keep me in the back burner. My fear throws me into the fire. Hell, I'm already fearful. Might as well get it hot, So it's just, it's to me, it's about moving forward. I think I wish that I would have had football at a younger age, because all the amazing things that I've accomplished pre-football, for me as a player even, would have been on next level. It's challenging yourself, I can't worry about what that guy's thinking over there. Not my problem. Not my problem. And that doesn't mean I'm going to be nasty. I'm going to still be respectable. I'm going to keep my composure. I'm going to use my voice, right? So fear propels me. It fires me up, right? So I encourage all of our people all of our women out there, even for our young brothers out there that may be in a new position at his job, and he's a little nervous and doesn't want to step outside the lines. Step outside the line. Just go there with your homework done. Bring something new to the table, something fresh. It's invigorating. For me, making tomorrow better today is invigorating to me. I'm like, what's next?
And what about, you came into an environment that was, a large part because of your preparation, because of your learning the culture, becoming part of the culture in a very natural, organic way, in terms of your transition to player, to coach Sharks, and then using your marketing and networking and relationship building skills to create a bond between the Sharks and the Jets that built the bridge, So in many ways, you helped to cultivate an environment that became welcoming to you. What is your advice for women who may be in environments that are still hostile to their ambitions, even as they advance into new areas and new levels of authority in their professions?
Same thing. Fire. Use it as fire. Use it as gasoline. Hell, I want a big fire. How about that? That may be a little fire to somebody, but to me, let's make a bonfire, and you're the first one that's going to throw your tie in there. I'm going to take your tie off and throw your tie in its fire and we're gonna get a real blaze going. You know, so for me, I think strategy with mind you, with women, know your opponent's weaknesses. Discover them.
Just like on the field.
Just like on the field. You know that guy in the office. He wants to be boasted about. Oh, Tom, you're such a great guy. And Tom, you just closed that deal. Tom gets really upset when he came close, but he didn't close it. You know, there's a certain way. Hit him then. Hit him then. You know, if he's gonna try to disadvantage you, you gotta disadvantage him. You know, survival of the fittest. Be the fittest. You know, that's a mindset that you have to live in. I don't want it to just be moments of it. Live in that. You know, I get up every day. I have to tell myself to get up, girl. Get up. Get up. Get up, girl. You got this. Make that phone call today. You got it. And if we have to give ourselves encouragement. Listen, everybody is put here for a reason. Find out your reason and have fun rediscovering who you are and what you're capable of, because there's so much more that I'm going to do. And I know damn well you got it in you too. I know that.
So where does the Collette V. Smith story go from here? What are some of the things you have coming up that, you know, I know you mentioned in our pre-call before we got on for this conversation, you know, a doc about your experiences. What are some of the ways that you're expanding this story to reach even more people, more girls, but more people in general, to help them recognize that the possibilities often lie far beyond what you've been taught and told?
Oh, well, I mean, I talked about challenges, right? I'm writing my book. I'm writing my life story, which is a real challenge for me. I hate to write. I hate it. I can't stand it. It's not that I'm afraid to be vulnerable and transparent. It's just that my words don't read right when I write them, right? They just don't read right. But so for me, it's a challenge. I'm writing my life story, and I'm going to be talking about, you know, my rapes. I'm a 5-time rape survivor. I am a 3-time suicide survivor. My first rape, I was raped by my uncle when I was a freshman in college. That hindered me. I'm going to be very transparent about that. I'm working on a documentary. So I've got my full-length documentary going on. So BET Her Network did a mini documentary on me. Mm-hmm. I was in great company with MC Lyte, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Megan Good, Terry J. Vaughn, and then your girl coach Collette V. Smith closed out the series with my documentary. And the producers that were here, they said, wow, Collette, you're gonna be the most difficult one we've had to do thus far. And I go right to the negative. What, did I mess up? And they're like, no, just that we wanna keep everything you said, but we have to shorten it for the half-an-hour show. Mm-hmm. So that propelled me to do my own documentary. Mm. So I've had people calling me. I've got a company I'm working with now called Broken Glass Filmworks that's doing my documentary. A brother I grew up with as a kid, you know, so I'm paying it forward. You know, he's not on the map yet, but he will be, you know, and we'll do it together. Also have a written script that I'm working on right now with some people about, you know, my written movie. Mm-hmm. Doing more speaking engagements. You know, I've been invited to Africa 2 times. Haven't been able to get there because the money wasn't there. Uh-huh. You know, I think just every day I just want more, and I want to be a beacon of hope to others, but myself first. Because if I get myself right, I can better help the next person. Right. So for me, this story doesn't stop. It doesn't end. You know, I've been doing major accounts with Amazon, Airbnb. I'm working on some stuff with Nike. every day is a new day. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. Like Nina Simone.
Man, I am loving it. I am loving it. I'm sure our audience is too. Just kind of to wrap up our conversation. And the last few things you said, I may have to have you on Beyond the Hype again because you explored a whole bunch of other new things. But it really does speak to how a lot of times when we see a particular moment in a person's time, in a person's story that breaks through, in your case, breaking this barrier as a woman NFL coach, we don't recognize that that's the tip of the iceberg of potential. As a journalist, I've learned that from experience, that you think that you know them and all about them for this thing, but there's a whole other story that built this to this point of public, media recognition. And just a few things you just dropped in the last couple of minutes, it gives a hint of great things to come for Collette Smith and the impact you'll have on others.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story on Beyond the Hype. If you were going to leave with a thought or an idea that our audience carries away from this conversation, if they don't remember anything else from the conversation, what would be that thought?
Use your weaknesses as a strength. Use your weaknesses as a strength. I'm strong today because of my weaknesses. Once you acknowledge what you're weak in, then we're going to get better at it because now we've identified what we're not strong in. So now you already have your strengths. Acknowledge your strengths, but know your weaknesses. And then now you're going to work on those. Be a complete package. Be a complete package. And the only way to do that is, I know I like to say the word homework and research. Homework and research. Be the best you can be. Every day is a beautiful challenge. See it as another way to say, look what I accomplished today. So like for me, when I go to sleep at night, I'm wrapping up my hair, putting a scarf on, right? How about I wrap up my hair and put a scarf on and say, I did these 4 things today. I only thought I'd do 2, right? So it's about exciting yourself. Like, get yourself excited about something. I'm not trying to live a mundane life, and I don't think you want to either, right? Do what excites you. Understand your weaknesses. Propel yourself into tomorrow to be the better you.
Yeah, I just thought of another question I got to ask before you go. Every step of this process, from being raped, from your real estate career could have ended when you could have just said, oh my God.
Yeah.
All right. You play football, knee injury, ends it. That could have ended it. At every point along the way, and I believe this is true for every human being on the journey, you could say, well, I'm broken, it's over. But you never surrendered to the idea that I was broken. No. That this thing might be over, but I'm not over.
Oh, I'm not over. I'm not done. I'm not done. You know what? Triumph over tragedy. Triumph over tragedy. I mean, there were so many times when I felt like, I tried. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, did you try hard enough? Did you really delve in deeply enough? Because if you did, cool, good. You gave it the good old college try. But if you know you didn't go, and mind you, I can't answer that for you. Only you can. Right? So for me, it's triumph over tragedy. All the times that I felt broken, I wasn't done. I got more. It's the same as working out. When you get your reps in and you're like, oh, you can't go anymore, guess what? It's that last one that means the most. It's that last one that's really shredded it and giving you muscle. That one more. Let's go.
Sis, you are preaching to me, because that's what I preach. Listen, I could talk to you forever. I'm so glad we had this conversation. Thank you, Collette B. Smith, for being our guest or our featured guest on Beyond the Hype for Black Enterprise.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you. And this is Alfred Edmond Jr. with Black Enterprise. You've been listening to Beyond the Hype.